Thank you. That was a very nice warm welcome. Oh, yeah. I feel extremely welcomed. And glad to be here. This is such a great little theater. What a wonderful venue that you have here for this. Very, very happy to be here today with Michelle and Dean. We've been having a great time with this little project. These are two people that I've collaborated with in many other different kinds of projects, but this is the first time we've done this sort of thing together. We'll start with a tune. I guess I should explain a little bit about what we're doing. We're going back to folk music. Some of these songs are centuries old. This first one, for example, I'm sure is from maybe I can't even remember now. Like maybe the 1700s, 1600s, something like that. Comes from the British Isles. As a lot of these songs did, they originated in the British Isles, and then they made their way across the ocean with people by oral tradition, and then all these different American versions sort of sprang up. And generally speaking, every song, if you research it a little bit, you find that it has dozens of different versions, because most of these songs are passed down orally. This one's called Bonnie, Bonnie Boy.
Have we got the Phantom on?
Ooh, the Phantom.
I'm sure she is never to blame.
Thank you very much. Does that mean you liked it? Oh, good. I was invited to perform again on the Prairie Home Companion Show after not doing so for many years, back in the fall of 2004. And when I first went on the show, I was asked to do a folk song segment for the first several weeks. And so I started researching folk songs. And of course, that's the music I grew up on, really. When I was a kid, they taught us a lot of folk music in school. I don't know if they do that anymore. But they did when I was a child. And also, my parents' record collection was small, but it was good. And it was all folk song artists of the 1960s, like Harry Belafonte, Peter, Paul, and Mary. And I don't know, I think if you're a professional musician, you can start to think, oh yeah, ho-hum. But I went back to this music, and I went to some of the things that I had learned as a kid, but then I dug a little deeper, and I started really digging and finding songs that I had never heard before that was a little more obscure, and I found what I really loved was the stories and the windows that they provide us into people's lives in other times. I'm kind of a big history nut. I mean, when I really think about my orientation, in a very simple way, some people are very forward-looking, and what really interests them is the future, new technologies, things like that. I tend to gravitate much more toward the past, and I'm really interested in history. I'm interested in the stories. I'm interested in how the past informs the present. So I guess more than create new music in my career, I have maintained traditions, I think, in the music that I've made, for the most part. That's all like very general. But Michelle and Dean and I all have pretty extensive background in improvisation, and Dean and Michelle still do that a lot. I've kind of gotten away from it. But let's see, the track I was on with the songs, I found a lot of songs that actually told stories about women, young women, older women, and the situations that they were in. And sometimes they're funny, and sometimes they're really tragic, and sometimes they're just like what people go through today. Nothing different, nothing changed. And so I started focusing just on songs about women. And so that all of these tunes are like that, and some of them go back as far as the 1600s. Some of them are more recent, like turn of the 20th century. And then we will also be performing a song that Dean wrote pretty soon. What did I think we were going to do next? Oh, okay. So this little show that we've put together, I was collecting these songs for a few years after that experience with the Prairie Home, and then I'd always wanted to kind of turn it into something. I started performing them just all by myself in little libraries around the state with my uke, and then I invited Dean to join me, and then we had this brilliant idea of adding Michelle as well. She was amenable. And so now we have this trio, which has been just delicious to do. It's been really, really fun.
Delicious.
Delicious. And we are performing at Open Eye Figure Theater in Minneapolis. This week, we had a show last night. We have two more tonight and tomorrow night at 8 p.m. If you haven't been to Open Eye, I hope you will come there at least sometime, because it's a wonderful little theater in Minneapolis, generally doing theater, but very kind of a mix of live and puppets and other kinds of figures, shadows, things like inanimate and animate object theater, and some music concerts, including us. We're part of a series called It's Women's Work. We're the final week of that. Let's continue with this song I found called A Single Girl. This one is definitely American. Yeah, hey, all right. Okay, let's see if I can get my uke to not slide around here. 1, 2, 3, 4. When I was single, I dressed up so fine. Now I am married, gone ragging all the time. I wish I was a single girl again. Dishes to wash and the well to go to. Now I am married, got everything to do. Oh, wish I was a single girl again. trouble to my grave, Lord. I wish I was, wish I was, wish I was a single girl again. Thanks. Anybody got any questions at this point? Anything you want to ask about? You see? Hey, great. Yeah, just holler it out, would you?
Decades upon decades. Totally lost track. At least over 30 years, somewhere around 40 years, I guess.
Weren't you born with a little cello?
Yeah, very small cello. They cut it off.
What time is it? That was the joke that goes with how long you've been playing. Since, yeah, I know. Not good. Since 1967. 1967.
I've been playing the uke only for, I don't know, a couple of years, and I have to, admit that I haven't exactly devoted myself to practicing or anything like that. But I've just, because I've always been a singer who kind of wished that I played something, but I never was interested enough really to really buckle down and get good at it. And I've just focused on singing for my whole career, which singing is something I started doing when I learned to talk. Because my dad liked to have our family sing together. That was a big family activity. I think mostly for the organizational thing that it offered our family of 10 children. So if we were singing together, we couldn't be messing things up or breaking anything. So I've only been playing the uke for a little while, but it's really fun for me actually to be in something where I can play, because most of the other music I do is too complex for my level of ability on the uke. And this isn't, and for the most part. And I have to just say I really, really thank Dean and Michelle for their patience with me in that regard.
We put up with you, Prue.
Yeah, thanks. You got a question? In terms of this kind of stuff? I'd have to say no. There aren't really. I hear people that are doing this kind of thing that I think are really great. And I love what they're doing, but I don't go to them for ideas or inspiration, really. I just take the songs and then we get together and make something out of them. Basically, it's just a melody and some words and maybe some chords, but oftentimes we make those up too. So we just kind of build it from the ground up. I don't think you can help but be influenced by everything you hear, whether it's, conscious or not. But yeah, there's a lot of people playing this kind of music these days, young people that are doing a great job of it. I know that. Who are some of my influences? Well, as I mentioned, as a little kid, I heard a lot of these great 60s folk artists, like Harry Belafonte and Peter, Paul, and Mary. Mary Travers just had a really perfect voice. And Joan Baez, people like that. Bob Dylan, of course. I mean, I grew up I was a teenager in the 1960s. So that was kind of the music that turned me on. Oh, same question to you both.
Mine would probably be more instrumental, although I tend to think of my cello as a singing voice. So if we're on the subject of vocalists, I did a lot of listening to Billie Holiday and Betty Carter and tried to copy a lot of that phrasing in my approach. So I don't know, I think that's kind of something interesting for a lot of instrumentalists to listen to the way vocalists, of course instrumentalists as well, but the way vocalists phrase and interpret.
For me, it's a very long list. Lately, I've been listening to B.B. King and a guy named Jovan Gasparian. Has anybody heard that name? He's a duduk player from Armenia. And also I've been listening to this guy, Zia Mohiuddin Dagar. He's from India. But I want to tell you that on November 2nd, 1968, at the Minneapolis Auditorium, and it changed my life, I saw Jimi Hendrix.
Whoa.
Yeah. And you know, in terms of the specter of my career, spectrum, I'm sorry, I meant to say. Yeah, the list of influences is endless, and you kind of go through different phases. And I guess when I first got interested in jazz, I was listening to the singers, but I quickly figured out that I didn't want to copy any other singer, and I started listening to horn players. Yeah. That was my really big influence when I was focusing on jazz for a couple of decades, was horn players like Lee Morgan and John Coltrane. One of my very favorites is Cannonball Adderley. Some people like that, Johnny Griffin. Trumpet and saxophone players for the most part, because I really was interested in phrasing like that. And I have to say Dave Carr, who's a saxophone player here in town, was a really huge influence on me. And the beautiful thing was I got to work with him a lot back when I was in this group for 10 years. And back then there were these great gigs you could get in town that were 4, 5, maybe even 6 night a week gigs where you would book yourself in for a month, maybe even 2 at a time. And so you had work 4 nights a week in the same venue for a month at a time. And so I was able to be a single mother, raise a child, make a living as a musician by working in town. Going out of town a little bit, doing some concert work, but basically, you know, we could work in town and make a living at it. You can't do that anymore, and that is a bad thing. I don't know, argue with me if you think I'm wrong, but anyway, should we do another song? Yes. Yeah, it's really changed.
Remember those days, Lori?
Yeah, she and I talked about it when I first got in touch with her 2 weeks ago. Yep, I do. I remember those days.
I mean, sometimes it would be hotel lounges, and those weren't my favorites, but there were some nice clubs around where you could just get booked in for several weeks or a month at a time. The hotel lounges were a little more, you know, you'd get hit on a lot by businessmen and that kind of crap. Little bit, you know, a little ruder of an audience. In the nightclubs, the people that came were there specifically to hear you. You know, it was great.
You make like a bill or 2 a night all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
What planet is that?
I don't know if I was making quite that much, but the whole economic thing was a little different then. I was probably making 75 or 100 a day, and in the 1970s and early 80s, that worked, especially if you're doing it 6 days a week. You know. This next piece comes from the Civil War. And a young woman is really distraught because her sweetheart is going off to the war. And she's trying to think of anything she can to stop that from happening. Or to stop them from being separated, I should say. The cruel war is raging, Johnny has to fight. I want to be with him from morning till night. I want to be with him, it grieves my heart so. Won't you let me go with you? No, my love, no. I'll go to your captain, get down on my knees, 10,000 gold guineas I'd give for your release. 10,000 gold guineas, it grieves my heart so. Won't you let me go with you? No, my love, no. Tomorrow is Sunday, and Monday Thank you. You know, I take that back. That can't be Civil War if they're talking about gold guineas. It must have come from some other war and then got associated. Maybe gold guineas. Where would they have gold guineas? She says Spanish American. I'm going with that.
Prudence, I had a question actually I thought of.
Yeah?
I find it fascinating how you research all these things and find them and discover them. Especially like technology now, it's a lot easier. But I know Maria Jetty got a grant and she went and sat in the Library of Congress for 2 weeks. And
Uh-huh.
what's your process for finding these?
Books. I went to a great bookstore up in Washburn, Wisconsin. It's huge and it's a mix of new and used books. And I went to their music section and just pulled like 3 books off the shelf for hardly any money that were all about the backstory on these songs. And they've got chapters on some of them actually. It would get really boring, I think, if I sat here and told you all of it. But some of it is really fascinating to me. And then, you can actually find some stuff on YouTube now. We're going to do this song in a little while called Shula Rún, which comes from Ireland in the 1600s. And there's this great video on YouTube that was made in the 70s about the history of the song and how it evolved and changed. And by the time it got to the US, this very sad war song that was originally sung in Gaelic had turned into this kind of silly nonsense tune played with this sort of up-tempo, wacky thing going on. Anyway, so it can be kind of fun, I love to research stuff like that. And it's interesting to me how the songs evolve and how they change. And they can get pretty way out there sometimes, too. Lots of different versions, which makes it hard when you want to settle in on exactly which version you want to do. There's sometimes so many to choose from. And so I end up kind of cutting and pasting a little bit. I could do for you, this is just a really short little thing. There's one I found called The Bad Girl. One of the great collectors, American collectors of folk music was named Alan Lomax. And you can get your mitts on some books, collections of his, and he'll often give you the backstory of the songs. This one's called The Bad Girl. When I was a young girl, I used to seek pleasure. When I was a young girl, I used to drink ale. Out of an alehouse into a jailhouse, out of the barroom and into my grave. Come, mama, come, papa, and sit you down by me. Come sit you down by me and pity me, try. My poor head is aching, my sad heart is breaking. My body's salivated and I'm ready to die. I want 4 young ladies to bear up my coffin. I want 4 young ladies to carry me on, and each of them carry a bunch of wild roses to lay on my coffin as they pass along. When I was a young girl, I used to seek pleasure. When I was a young girl, I used to drink ale. Out of an alehouse into a jailhouse. Out of the barroom and into my grave. Okay, I want to come back and play for you guys more. You make me feel real good. Thank you. Are we going to have Liana now? Yes. Really? Oh, it's going so fast. Okay, well then you've got to hear this song that Dean wrote, that Dean and Michelle will perform for you. It's super beautiful. Called Liana.
Can I say something? Just because I'm
course.
tired and kind of weak.
That's why?
Actually, yes, because I just wanted to say, in standing in class today, I want to tell you that I'm so very proud to be your teacher. Because when people come and perform here, whenever I ask them to come back, they really love coming back. It's not $1 zillion. They enjoy hanging out with you. So I'm really proud of you. You're just really respectful, wonderful young musicians. So thank you very, very kindly for that. Don't you appreciate it?
Yes. Thank you. And I'll say, it's a wonderful thing you do playing music, no matter what happens. Thank you, music. Viva musica.
Yeah, and I say, keep an open mind. Keep yourself open. Music of all kinds is beautiful, and all of it has so much to offer us. I try to keep my mind as open as possible. Sometimes it's hard.
Yes.
Michelle, any last words?
I hope I make it home.
You hope what?
That's my last words.
I missed
No,
them.
I agree with all your sentiments.
Do we have any more questions before we play another tune? Yeah. We each have individual websites. I'd like to get this. I'm working now on getting this project up on my site, a specific page for it. I have a couple other projects going on, and now this one feels like it's really solidified and ready to be launched and given to the world. So yeah, I'll put something up on my website, which is prudencejohnson.com, about this. Dean, of course, has deanmcgraw.com. Michelle can be Googled, and she can be found all over the place, I think, on the web. MySpace with Jello Slave, Mississippi Peace. She works with so many different people. Well, so does Dean.
Like right afterwards, if folks have a quick question, do you have 5 minutes?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we had one question right here. Where else do I look for inspiration?
I'm ready to answer that one.
Dean's ready to answer that one.
You ever heard a Cardinals song?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Birds. Aren't birds amazing? And do you love anybody? Well, there you go. Good answer, dude. This guy. Give him a raise. And thank you for saying that. Love is the place to get inspiration. Birds and love. Yeah.
Yeah. So is it time for a tune and then we got to be done? Yeah? Okay. All right. Well, how about if we close with Careless Love? Because it's kind of different from the other ones. All right. We'll close with this tune that's, I can't be real specific, but I think this is kind of a turn of the 20th century type of tune, maybe a W.C. Handy sort of thing. Another song where you will find millions and millions of different versions and verses of this song, and generally it's just like a love-lost lament. But I happen to find this one version that I find particularly intriguing, and I just cut away all the chaff and got right to the point. It's called Careless Love. Hope I'm still in tune enough. Love, oh careless love. Love, oh love, careless love. Love, oh love, oh careless love. You see what careless love has done. When I wore my apron low, You see my door, you pass right by. Pass my door, you pass my gate. Pass my door, you pass my gate. Pass my door, you pass my gate. But you won't get past my 38. Love, oh love, careless love. Love, oh love, careless love. Love, oh careless love. You see what careless love has done.
Prudence Johnson.
Dean McGraw, Michelle Kitty. Thank you so much, Lori, for inviting us.